So Drake just broke his silence on a rumor that's been haunting him for almost 10 years. And when I say haunting, I mean this story has popped up in diss tracks, TMZ articles, podcasts, and now it's back again. We're talking about one of the most bizarre allegations in hip hop history. No guns, no drama, no betrayal, just a movie theater, a drunk guy, and a moment that Drake wishes never happened. Or did it even happen at all? Because he's finally saying something, and honestly, his explanation is raising more questions than answers. What really went down that night? Why did multiple rappers feel comfortable enough to put this in their actual songs? And why is Drake addressing it now, in 2025, when he could have just let it die? Let's rewind to 2015. Drake's already a massive name, riding high off hits and respect in the industry. He shows up to a private screening for the movie Takers. It's supposed to be a chill night. Industry people, some drinks, nothing too crazy. But according to the story that refuses to disappear, something wild happened. T.I.'s friend, a guy named Terrence "Cat" Beasley, was apparently drunk out of his mind. And in the middle of the theater, he turned around and just started urinating. Not in a bathroom, not outside, right there. And Drake, supposedly, was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Now, nobody's saying this was intentional. That's the key detail everyone keeps repeating. It wasn't like someone targeted Drake and decided to humiliate him. It was just pure chaos, bad timing, and way too much alcohol. But here's the thing. Even if it was an accident, even if it was just splashback or whatever people want to call it, the fact that this story has lived for nearly a decade means something went down that night. Fast forward to 2020. T.I. drops a track, and out of nowhere, he references the incident. He's talking about his late friend Cat Beasley, paying respects, and then casually throws in a line that basically confirms the rumor. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't a diss, but it was enough to make people go, wait, so that really happened? Because when you put something in a song, especially something this specific, it's not just gossip anymore, it's part of the official record. And here's where it gets messy. T.I. and Drake weren't beefing at that time, so why even bring it up? Some people think it was just T.I. being real, honoring his boy and telling the story as it was. Others think it was a subtle jab. A reminder that no matter how big Drake gets, there are moments from his past that can't be erased. Either way, it kept the rumor alive, and it made people wonder if Drake would ever respond. But T.I. wasn't the only one. Back in 2015, right in the middle of the Drake versus Meek Mill war, Meek dropped a diss track called "Wanna Know," and he didn't hold back. He straight up referenced the theater incident, using it as ammunition to paint Drake as someone who's not as untouchable as he seems. Now, diss tracks are supposed to hit hard, but this felt different, because if it never happened, why would Meek feel confident enough to put it in a song? He had to know Drake would respond if it was completely made up, right? But Drake never really addressed it back then. He fired back at Meek with other disses, destroyed him with back-to-back. But he never once said, "That theater thing? Total lie." And that silence made people believe it even more. Because if someone's lying about you, you shut it down immediately. You don't let it sit for years. So why did Drake stay quiet for so long? Then TMZ picked it up. And when TMZ runs a story, you know it's about to reach a whole new level. They didn't just repeat the rumor. They actually claimed to have sources who were there that night. People who saw what happened. And those sources backed up the story. They said it was unintentional. They said Cat was drunk, but they also confirmed that something involving Drake and urine definitely went down in that theater. Now, TMZ isn't always perfect, but they don't usually run stories like this without at least some confirmation. So when they put it out there, it added another layer of credibility to the whole thing. And still, Drake said nothing. No Instagram post, no interview, no tweet, just silence, which only made people more convinced that it actually happened and he was just too embarrassed to talk about it. So here we are, almost 10 years later, and Drake finally decides to speak. A podcast brings up the story again, it goes viral, and Drake jumps into the comments on Instagram. He doesn't make a big statement, doesn't do a whole interview, just drops a comment. And what does he say? He flat out denies it. Says, no man ever urinated on him, calls the whole thing fake, and claims it only exists because people need clickbait to get their interviews watched. But here's the problem. That explanation doesn't really add up. Because if this was just made up clickbait, why did T.I. put it in a song? Why did Meek reference it? Why did TMZ run with it? All of these people would have to be lying or exaggerating for Drake's version to be true. And that seems like a lot of coordination just to embarrass someone over something that never happened. When The Breakfast Club talked about it, they weren't buying Drake's denial either. They broke it down and said, look, even if it wasn't intentional, even if it was just splashback from someone peeing on the floor, something clearly happened. Because you don't have this many people referencing the same story unless there's at least some truth to it. One of the hosts even pointed out that if Drake had stayed a mid-level artist, nobody would care. But because he became one of the biggest stars on the planet, every embarrassing moment from his past gets magnified. And that's facts. If this happened to someone who never blew up, it would just be a funny story their friends tell at parties. But because it's Drake, it became a weapon. A way to remind him that no matter how successful he gets, there are still moments he can't control or erase. And maybe that's what bothers him the most. Not that it happened, but that people won't let it go. So the real question is, why address it now? It's been almost a decade. The story had kind of faded into the background. Sure, it would pop up every now and then, but it wasn't dominating headlines or anything. So why did Drake feel the need to comment on it in 2025? Maybe he's tired of it following him around. Maybe he's trying to set the record straight before it gets even bigger. Or maybe, just maybe, something new was about to come out, and he wanted to get ahead of it. Because here's the thing. When someone denies something this late in the game, it usually means they're worried it's about to blow up again. And if Drake was really unbothered, if this really didn't happen, would he even care enough to comment? Or would he just let people talk and move on with his life? At the end of the day, we might never know the full truth. Was Drake directly urinated on by a drunk guy in a movie theater? Probably not in the way people imagine. Was he in a situation where urine ended up on him somehow, whether it was splashback or just being too close to the chaos? That seems way more likely. And honestly, that's still embarrassing enough to want to deny it years later. But the fact that multiple people have referenced it, the fact that it's been consistent across different sources, and the fact that Drake waited this long to say anything all point to the same conclusion. Something happened that night. Maybe not exactly the way the rumors describe it, but enough that it became a story people couldn't stop talking about. So where does that leave us? Drake says it never happened. T.I. put it in a song. Meek used it as a diss. TMZ confirmed it with sources, and now we're all left trying to figure out who's telling the truth. But here's what I want to know. If you were in Drake's position, and this really was just a made-up rumor, would you have addressed it sooner? Or would you have done exactly what he did and stayed silent for years? And do you believe his denial? Or do you think he's just trying to rewrite history now that he's at the top? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Do you think Drake's telling the truth? Or is there more to the story than he's willing to admit? And honestly, if it did happen, does it even matter at this point? Or is it just one of those wild moments that make hip-hop so unpredictable? Let me know what you think. And if you made it this far, hit that like button because we're diving deep into the stories nobody else wants to touch.